Welcome back to the Arch Advocate podcast for Monday. The Arch Advocate Show is where we approach these strange days that we're living in and look at it all through the lens of pragmatic spirituality. Pragmatic. Let me just break this down here for you. By the way, if you're new, I'm a bit of a word snob, right? I don't like the abuse of the English language. Definition of pragmatic: relating to matters of fact or practical affairs, often to the exclusion of intellectual or artistic matters. Practical, as opposed to idealistic. It's kind of a funny thing, right? Intellectual or artistic matters, the exclusion of intellectual matters. It's kind of funny. But anyways, pragmatic, right? We have to look at what we're seeing and see the long term. Take the information that we have and predict the future with it, right? Become little prophets, little soothsayers, little seers of visions, or whatever, however it is that you want to, contextualize it. But these things that are happening right now is, echoing into the future, and on a moment by moment basis, we are stepping into the future. And these things that are going on is shaping that future one way or the other, and we have to look at that, right? So that's when you get into well, how is this going to affect what happens a month from now, 6 months from now, whatever? Well, then you're getting into some very ethereal territory. Now you're talking about predicting the future, right? Which is usually the terrain of prophets and people like Nostradamus and Jules Verne and people like this. Who was it that wrote 1984? Anyways. That's we can do that. We can take a pragmatic look. Like, okay, well, if this happens, what are the possible outcomes of this happening? Or what are the possible outcomes that this could cause to happen? And you can kind of narrow it down to just a few different things. Well, it's either going to go this way, or that way. Right? I think we can do that. And, starting off, I'd like to say that, from where I'm sitting, it really looks like there is no greater machine that spits out conservative voters right now than the Democratic Party. They're just turning people into conservatives left and right. Because of all of this, all of this slander and shady, backhanded deals and obstruction, where they took, you had a sitting senator of the state of California, Dianne Feinstein. That's a very important seat. Now, every state only gets 2 senators, so, technically, Dianne Feinstein is no more powerful than whoever the senator of Wyoming is, right? But on the other hand, California has over 40 million people in it. Nobody generates more money, no more commerce than California. California is the Central Valley of California is the largest place in the world for agricultural production. Right? There's no other place on the planet that produces as much food as the Central Valley of California. So California is a very important state when it comes to that. And so you would think that would lend itself to meaning that the senator, those 2 senators are more powerful than the 2 senators of Wyoming. You would think. I'm not saying it works that way. But what I'm saying is here's this important person. She sits on the Senate. There's only 100 senators, plus the Vice President of the United States, right? And she had evidence, right? Somebody wrote her a letter and said, "Hey, Brett Kavanaugh raped me in 1983, and please don't put my name out there. I'm just letting you know," right? And during the Senate, hearings, where that information, that was the place to bring that up. She didn't bring it up. And instead of bringing it up, what she was doing while those Senate confirmation hearings were going on, she was advising that lady on which attorneys to use, which, by the way, is, from what I gather, that's a huge no-no, right? So it's shady. And we expect more from our political operators, from our Congress people, our senators, even right down to the mayor of your town. We expect more out of you because you have assumed a position of leadership. You said, listen, vote for me and I will lead you to where you want to go. Okay, well, I guess if you're a leader, then here it is, right? Because we all have, leadership. Leadership isn't something that you get to not have. No matter who you are going to be a leader of something, right? If you're, maybe you're an auto mechanic, right? Well, if you're an auto mechanic, then you need to be very good at your job, and you need to instill excellence in your fellow employees, whether you own that shop or not. But certainly if you do own it, you have to instill in your employees and your fellow co-workers, like, listen, we all need to be excellent. Because if we start dropping the ball, if we start sloughing off our customers, well, guess what? They're going to stop coming here, and then we're all going to go broke. So we all need to be excellent. And whoever you are, you're going to be a leader. Do you have children? Guess what? Congratulations, you are now a leader. And there's degrees to it, right? There's military leaders, and that's those people are tasked with leading men into the theater of battle to kill and to die. That takes a very special kind of leadership, right? You've got, you have to be a leader if you're a surgeon. You have to be, no matter who you are, there is no escaping leadership. So that concept it's sacred. And when people abuse that concept, or they fail to lead their children, they fail to lead their co-workers, there's a breakdown that happens. Let's say you have an auto mechanic shop and there's 5 employees, right? And everybody's not making a whole lot of money, but they're making good money. They're making money enough to pay their bills, feed their kids, whatever. Well, if all of a sudden there's a culture that begins of like, well, let's just be lazy and take shortcuts and lie to our customers and, lie to the IRS or whatever. Well, guess what? Like, that place is going to get shut down. It's going to go out of business. And then you're going to have 5 people that are now going to be standing in the unemployment line taking social benefits, right? Sucking off of the system because now they're not employed. And their children are going to see that their father is not employed. Right? It has economic effects. It has, sociological effects. Everything affects everything. That's why you have to be a leader, and you have to be a leader in every aspect of the life that you have. And that can take you places. It can take you into military leadership or political leadership or religious leadership or whatever, right? When you practice leadership, like, the idea is you have to get better at it. And so technically these people, senators and congresspeople, they are like the generals and the colonels. They're at the very top. And therefore we expect more from these people. And when we see senators doing things that in a different context would be against the law, and perhaps there were some laws broken, what Dianne Feinstein did, it breaks down the morale of the people. It breaks the people's spirit, because it's like, man, you're supposed to be the leader. Why are you doing this? Why? How is it that you knew you had your position? You had your 2 weeks of Senate confirmation hearings on Brett Kavanaugh. You were sitting on this information. You purposely withheld that information while you were advising Miss Ford on which attorneys she should get. And you didn't bring it up in a private meeting, in private meetings with Brett Kavanaugh, and you didn't bring it up in the Senate committee, in the hearings. You didn't ask him about it. So your leadership is now, it's now ruined. And I've made this point before. I was explaining this to my wife earlier today. It's like, look, as far as that goes, right? That kind of leadership it can only produce 2 different types of people in the Democrat Party. Because you're not, people that are registered to vote Republican and have conservative values, none of people like me, I'm assuming people like you, none of us are going to look at that and say, you know what, that is legit, capital A, capital F. I now see the light. I'm going to go down to the post office, pick up a voter registration card, and fill it out and drop it in the mail because the postage is paid and I don't have to put a stamp on it. Double check to make sure my signature's on it. I'm going to change my voter registration to Democrat, and I'm going to be voting for Bernie Sanders in 2020 or whatever. There's not a single person that's going through that. There's not a single conservative or registered Republican or libertarian or independent. There's nobody who is not, to the far left. Anybody who is to the right of the far left, none of those people are saying, I'm going to make sure that my vote counts for the Democrat Party by re-registering to vote to become a Democrat because I see now that Dianne Feinstein is honest, she has integrity, she speaks the truth, and I want to be associated with those people. There is zero occurrences of that happening right now. And how can I prove that? Well, I can't. I'm just shooting from the hip, but that's I cannot imagine a parallel universe where that, where that's happening. None of that's happening. So let's just take anybody who prior to November of 2016 or shortly thereafter, anybody who was registered to vote as anything other than Democrat in November of 2016, none of those people have re-registered to vote Democrat based on what they've just seen in the Kavanaugh hearing. So that just leaves the people who are registered to vote as Democrat, right? Now the Democrats have been suffering now, not just for the last 2 years, but during the Obama administration. Remember, Obama completely emptied the coffers, right, and left the DNC dead broke. They have no money. And they've lost a lot of seats in the legislature. And apparently they're losing a lot of seats in the Congress, and we're going to see about the Senate here coming up in about a month. But they've been losing for a long time. Not just for the last 2 years. They've been losing for a long time. So there's a group of Democrats. It's about, people that registered to vote Democrat. It's about half of the nation. It's about half. That's usually how it goes. Democrats and Republicans, it's pretty much half and half. So they've just got those people to worry about. So this thing that Dianne Feinstein and Jeff Flake, who I am about to get into here in just a second, and Cory Booker and Kamala Harris and these people, Senator Gillibrand from New York and all these people, it's like, look, they are speaking only to Democrats. Nobody else is listening to them and thinking, oh, these people are legit. They're only speaking to their base. So this is only going to have one of two effects. There's going to be a certain percentage, probably a large percentage, but there's going to be a certain percentage of people that are looking at this and it's just going to galvanize them into voting Democrat. They're going to look at this and be like, Kavanaugh's a rapist, Dianne Feinstein is telling the truth, Cory Booker really is Spartacus. These people don't have, an ulterior motive. They're just about, the republic and democracy and whatever. These are good people. There's going to be a certain percentage of people who are going to be galvanized into their position even further. Because they hate Trump. But there's another element of people who are registered to vote as Democrats, and we are seeing more and more of them on my Twitter page and on my Facebook page and in my comments on this podcast and in my comments on the YouTube version of this show. We are seeing more and more of these people who are like, you know what, dude, I am out. I can't be associated with these people anymore. It's too much. You can't lie about people and destroy them and clearly display the fact that you are now politicizing rape. They've politicized rape. And this is horrifically bad for women. And this is what I'm saying, like the Democrats, I'm not saying Democrat leadership. I'm talking about, registered to vote Democrat America. a lot of these Democrats can't see like this. Like if you were truly concerned, like in your heart, like maybe you had a very close family member who was raped, or a very close friend or something, and this is like something that's in your mind a lot, and you wish that there was more that was being done to protect women or whatever. Guess what? Your party just politicized rape, and rape is a criminal matter. And when you pull out rape and you start using that as a tool to bring about your political will, you've now put that in the political sphere and taken it out of the criminal. And now it's going to be political. And now we're going to have to make policies based on that. And the way that we make policies is, look, when it comes to the false accusation, listen, in America, it is a very rare thing when a woman cries rape and cannot prove that she is raped, that the woman is then punished for making false accusations. That doesn't happen a lot in America. Usually if a woman accuses a man of rape and she can't prove it, then the guy just goes home and the girl goes home, and that's the end of it. There have been a small number, but large enough. One is too many. There's been a number of people who, there was that black kid, the football player, who was accused of rape and spent like 6 years in prison. And then, he got his accuser to admit, as he was recording her, that she made the whole thing up. And I don't think she got punished. There was that lady in England, that gigantic behemoth of a she looks like Juggernaut from X-Men. Big, gigantic, ugly looking woman, and she had sent like 12 dudes to prison by claiming that she was raped. And it's like, you got raped? You did. She's a big, ugly, and she's just got this scowl on her face. Well, finally, she got sent to prison for falsely accusing men of rape. But that's in England. Like in America, that doesn't happen very often. If a woman falsely accuses a man of rape, they just drop it. Say, all right, lady, we don't really have a whole lot of laws concerning this. Well, guess what, Democrats? Now there's going to be some laws. Because you politicized this. You brought this into the political sphere, and now we're going to have to make laws. We're going to have to make laws. They're not going to make laws about, we're not going to change the way that we have due process and the right to face your accuser and the right to cross-examination and the right to an attorney. Like, we're not changing any of that. Those things are going to remain the same. If you accuse somebody of something, you have the burden of proof to prove your accusations. That's the way it works. And now that you've brought it into the political sphere, now we're going to have some laws about what happens when you can't prove it. Which, the fact that there's a lot of women who get raped and never say anything because of the shame, because they feel that they won't be believed and all that. Guess what, Democrats? You just set that cause back into the 1950s. You just knocked women back into the Stone Age with that, because now we're going to have laws regarding false accusations of rape, where we really don't have any as it is right now. I mean, we have a few, but we really don't have a lot. The way that we've dealt with this situation in the past is we just kind of ignored it. We didn't write any laws. Like, I'm sorry that lady accused you of rape, but she couldn't prove it, so everybody gets to go home now. And the woman doesn't have to pay, she doesn't have to suffer any consequences. Well, guess what, Democrats? Those days are over, and you ended them. And you created, this swell, this mass exodus of registered voters who are just like, they're looking at the Democrats and like, I can't be associated with this. This is insane. This lady is talking about a charge that's almost 40 years old. At every single point in the facts that she has brought up as being presented as facts, on every single one of them, there is shenanigans, to say the least. Oh, I've got 4 witnesses. Well, and one of them is my best friend. Well, guess what? All 4 of them, and particularly your best friend, say they don't know what the hell you're talking about. Oh, I don't remember what day the polygraph was a couple of weeks ago. You don't remember being given a polygraph test. Really? Is that because, 3 times a day you take a polygraph test and you just can't keep them all straight in your head? If people have had a polygraph test in their life, it was probably just that one time. You know what I mean? Like, taking a polygraph test isn't like, when did you get your flu shot? Because I get my flu shots every year and it kind of varies. It's like, no, taking a polygraph test is like kind of one of those once in a lifetime things. And you were saying it was either the day that you buried your grandmother or it was the next day when you had to catch a flight. And you can't remember which one of those 2 days. False. You don't remember how you got to the house. You don't remember what was going on in the house. You don't remember which house it was. And you don't remember how you got home from that house. You don't know what day it was, what week it was, or what month it was, or even what year it was. Okay? All right? You said, you stood up there and said, remember that? They were like, well, who's paying your attorneys? And the attorneys had to shut her mouth and step in and say, oh, we're working pro bono. Like, oh boy. If it turns out that you're making money off of those lawyers, oh boy. The thing is that people can see this. Now, I've said this before, like, the reason again, let me preface this with, I love conspiracy theories. I love them. They're like little stories, they're like little short stories. They're fun, You can geek out on them, but, for the most part, when I look at a conspiracy theory, it's like, okay, can I rightly assume that this many people suddenly grew a new gene, you know what I mean? Suddenly got a new strand of DNA in their blood and learned how to work together with a whole network of people? No, I don't believe that. People aren't that smart. And when I say people, I mean me too. Like, people just aren't that smart. We're not smart enough to work behind the scenes in the dark in a coordinated effort. Like, it's a rare, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't. I don't believe that people are that smart, right? That being said, it's like, when it comes to, do I think that the American people, that half of the American people are looking at this Blasey Ford thing and going, oh yeah, this seems legit. I don't believe that people are that stupid. I don't believe that people are that stupid. I just don't see it. I see a lot of people on television and on social media, but for all I know, what I can see represents all of them, and it's just, 10, 20,000 people maybe. I don't know. Not that many. And moving on, talking about leadership, like, look at what happened with Jeff Flake. Now, this is important because I'm going to get into, like, when I get into the, the third part of the show, Bible stuff. It's like your word. Your word. I'll qualify that statement here in a second. So, as we all know, Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, he's a liberal. He's a rhino, a Republican in name only. And he's retiring. He's already made that announcement, and he's a never Trumper. He's one of these people. And he's a coward. We saw over the weekend, he got shouted down by some girls in an elevator. And you should go and listen. I'm not going to play the clip on this podcast, but you should listen to these screeching banshees shouting this guy down. And you need to look at his face if you want to see the truth about this man. He's got this just defeated look on his face because he's getting bullied. These girls are walking up to him saying, give me your lunch money. I'm hungry. And it's your fault that I'm hungry. Give me your lunch money or I'm going to beat you up. He just gets bullied, absolutely emasculated. And you know what emasculated means? It means to have your balls removed. We can see in real time, right? And I'm sure at one point it was live, but we can see it happening in this video. He gets cornered by a couple of girls screaming, angry banshee girls who, by the way, are literally being paid by George Soros, and that is not a conspiracy theory. That is a fact. Those two girls are professional activists who work for a George Soros-funded organization. So, yeah. No, we don't need to question, whether these girls are genuinely, for the cause or not. They're being paid, and money changes everything. Right? Anyways, let's get off of that. I don't want to talk about those screaming banshees. If that was me, I would have kicked them right in their pussy. But this guy, Jeff Flake, he turns bitch. And you can watch it happen on his face. He just turns absolute bitch. Like that kid that we used to see when we were in high school that was getting bullied by the wrestling team or whatever. Or by the stoners or, whoever the tough guy was. Not the wrestler. Wrestling team guys are usually pretty cool. But we remember seeing the weakling in high school getting bullied, right? Or maybe we were that guy. I got bullied middle school and into the first part of high school. I got bullied a couple times. I have an older brother. He had to come to my rescue once. It's a terrible thing to get bullied. Like when you're small, you know what I mean? And especially in that middle school to high school range where it's like, man, you go from, one day you're 100 pounds and the next day you're 150 and your voice is way lower. You know what I mean? I remember when that happened. I remember when it was 8th grade. I came back to school and all of a sudden I had this voice. And everybody was like, damn, why are you talking so low? I'm like, I don't know. But you remember, there was always that, that scrawny kid. And if it was you, when you were still scrawny, if you got bullied, you remember that feeling, that sickness. It felt like you suddenly got the flu. Right? You felt weak and thirsty and just vulnerable when somebody came and bullied you. And for most of us, that was our sort of cue, like, okay, I guess it's time for me to join the wrestling team and learn how to fight. Right? That's what most of us did with that energy. So we said, okay, I guess this feeling of being pushed around, I can't live like this. I'm gonna have to learn how to fight, but we remember that feeling. You can see that feeling on Jeff Flake's face, and he is a grown-ass man. He's a senator, and he's getting pushed around by these screeching banshees, and he just turns into a coward right on TV. And what was his payoff for doing that? So he left that elevator and said, okay, we need to have the FBI investigate. And the Republicans went along with it like a bunch of bitches. So that's why we now have this extra week of the FBI doing something that they've already done 6 times. They're going to do it again, and then we'll have the vote hopefully by the end of this week. And what was Jeff Flake's reward? What was his reward? Where he went to the next day or 2 days after that, he went to a convention, a rally for another Democrat senator, and he got up on stage and said, hey, you can come and talk to me anytime you want. If you want to come talk to me in an elevator, you know what his reward was? That whole room full of screeching Democrats, they just yelled and screamed, F you, F you. You can see it. That's what capitulation gets you. That's what giving your milk money to the bully gets you. That is your reward. It means tomorrow you're going to have to give him your milk money again. Jeff Flake appeased those screeching banshees. And you know what appeasement is? You know what it means? It means you get eaten last. That's all appeasement does. It just means you get eaten last, but you're still going to get eaten. That's why your word has to count. And I don't mean word like the vibrations that come out of your throat when you speak, but your word. It doesn't mean the sounds that come out of your face when you're communicating. Your word is who you are. And Jeff Flake, we saw what his word is worth. He's a coward. He is somebody who allows people to bully him, and he's a sitting U.S. senator. He allows people to push him around. That's not, listen, it's acceptable when you're, like, listen, I have one son, I have another one on the way here in just a couple of days. By the way, you guys, my wife was at the doctor's like all day yesterday because she thought she was going into labor. So that's just to let you guys know, like, one of these days you're going to tune into the podcast and it's not going to be there. And when that happens, it's because my wife's in labor. So just warning, it's coming. But my kids are going to grow up just like I grew up and just like you grew up. You know what I mean? They're going to go into elementary and middle school and high school. And eventually, my sons are going to come home and say, Dad, man, I had this weird occurrence today. Like, this kid was pushing me around. I didn't know what to do. And I was scared, I was nervous, and I cried, and I pissed my pants, or whatever it is that they say. You know what I mean? They are going to come home with that report. And I'm going to have to be the one that sits them down and explains the human condition to them in that moment in a way that they can understand. That this is who people are. And that we, as men, we have to make sure that we are not that person. And that there's bullies, there are the bullied, there are the people who get bullied, and there are the bullies, and then there are the bully slayers. My sons will be bully slayers. I'm going to teach them to bully the bullies and to protect the weaker people, the skinnier kids, the fat kid, the ugly kid. All right, there's a kid in this town that I'm in right now, and I see him because I take my son to the park where all the other parents bring their kids, and there's this one little boy. It breaks my heart every time I see this kid because he's just a little boy. He's like 3, you know what I mean? Little boy, and he's always playing by himself. None of the other little boys and girls want to play with him because he's got this huge birthmark on his face. That it's one of those birthmarks that grows like a lot of hair, like a lot of hair. Like this little 3-year-old boy, don't listen, it's all right if you laugh, but then just try to come back and be serious for a second. Like the entire side of his face, like from the cleft of his chin to his ear, is just this one gigantic like black birthmark that grows a full beard, like a lot of hair. You know what I mean? Like, you know how like when you let your beard get too long and you go a few days without shaving because it's your week off or whatever, and then you kind of loathe the idea of shaving because it's gonna hurt. You know what I mean? Because your beard's gotten all thick and long and it's gonna really take a lot of effort. He's got like a huge beard. He's just a little boy. And so the other little boys and girls don't play with him. You know what I mean? Like that kid, he's either going to grow up to be a mass murderer or he's going to be like the greatest political leader who ever lived because he is going to be forced to be strong because he's going to get picked on his entire life. And if somebody doesn't come along and say, listen, when people come pick on you, you just got to punch them right in the face, just square in the nose and just let them know. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, ha ha ha, it's funny, but you want to come up to me and make jokes, you're going to get punched in the face. I'm going to make you see stars. And then you'll know. So I'm going to raise my boys to be like, you see that kid right there, that kid with that beard? You got to go be his friend and make sure he's okay. And make sure that he knows how to fight. You know what I mean? Make sure that he knows that he's not alone in this world. And, so I'm sorry I kind of went off there. The point I was trying to make is that it's acceptable when it's little kids, because it's like, yeah, this is in our DNA and it's a teaching moment. It's a teaching moment when your kids come home and they got bullied. It's a teaching moment when the teacher calls you and says, hey, your kid is the bully. That's a teaching moment. Right? Hey, your kid got in a fight with another kid. That too is a teaching moment. But guess what? By the time they turn 18 and they graduate high school, it's like, by that time, they are supposed to be, that part of the human condition as it applies to those kids, that time, that aspect of their personality and their character should already be formed. you shouldn't have to explain to grown-ass men why it is that we don't bully people, and why it is and why it is that we don't allow other people to bully us. And why it is that when we see other people getting bullied, that we don't just stand by. That when we see people getting, if we see a woman getting beaten up by a man, we insert ourselves into that formula. We don't allow that. We don't let that happen. If we see a grown man beating on his kid, I'm not talking about like normal spanking, but like beating on their kids, you insert yourself into that situation. And once your kids grow up and they're no longer 18, 20 years old, it's like, okay, you should know this by now. This is like riding a bike or tying your shoes. You should know this by now. And a sitting U.S. senator, an old man, right? He's a senator in the most powerful, wealthiest government ever in human existence, and he is one of 100 people that is, part of the rudder that moves the ship. Right? He's very, very, very important. He's a grown-ass man. And we are watching this happen, that this man is allowing himself to be bullied by these screeching banshees. And then we get to see what his reward was. Literally F you. You can hear it, in that when he goes to, to help his Democrat senator friend, we can hear the response. They just ate him alive. Because that's the thing, is that, like, listen, you think by waffling and appeasing your enemy that they're going to give you favors and think that you're strong? No, they're not. They may just be gracious enough to eat you last. But they didn't in this case. He's not getting eaten last. He's getting eaten up as we speak by Democrats. Now nobody respects him. Now think about your word and who you are and what you believe. Because this is vitally important. This is in my opinion, this is what we are being faced with. Everything that I see that's going on right now. Because of the way that I believe in God and the way that I follow Jesus, is that I have to look around and think everything is from the Lord. Now, how do you do that when you see so much evil going on in the world? How can you look at that and say, well, this is from the Lord? Well, it's difficult and it's complicated, and if I had 5 hours and a bottle of whiskey, I'm sure I could explain it to you. But ultimately, it's what we are going through is a revelation of the times that we are in. We didn't know that the Democrats were this crazy 2 years ago. They were already this crazy. None of us knew it. The fact that it's been revealed to us, that is from the Lord, and it is a call to action. Not to take action against those people. I'm sure it will come to that, and for the most part, I believe that those sick people will take care of themselves. People who work purposely in the dark, like Dianne Feinstein and Cory Booker and Kamala Harris and Michael Avenatti and all of those people, their darkness are operators. They will kill themselves. We don't really have to worry too much about those people because they're self-destructive. They've chosen to walk in the dark, and they're going to trip and fall and smash their head on something. The important thing is who are you? Who are you? Are you going to follow along with this postmodernist narrative that there's no such thing as evil? There's no right, there's no wrong. There's just kind of whoever it is that you are, man. Whatever, man. Is that what you're going to believe? Because I can sit here and remind you of evil all day long. Evil that to even speak about it is gut-wrenching. And it happens every single day. All around the world, evil is happening. Right now, there are over 40 million people in slavery. Slavery. It's 2008, people, and I just said that there are over 40 million people living in slavery today. There are children who get abducted and are used for things that I can't describe. It's because it affects me so much to even speak it, but it happens, and you know that it happens. You want to be all postmodernist and think, well, there's no God, there's no such thing as good and evil. That's just a construct of that happened during the evolution of man. You're going to sit there and tell me there's no evil. You're going to say that those things that happen to children, that's not evil in your mind? Well, then you're a monster, and I'm done with you. You understand? Who are you going to be in this time? Right? Now, we've had it very good for a very long time. We've been afforded the luxury of sitting back on our asses and saying, hey man, you know what, you do you. You believe what you want to believe, I'm going to believe what I want to believe. We're all free, you know what I mean? Postmodernism has crept into the church to a large degree. The satanic postmodernism has crept into the church. You can see it everywhere you look. Right? But that was then. That was yesterday, and yesterday's over. Who are you going to be today? What will your word be worth? And what do I mean by word? All right, let's get into some Bible stuff here. Now, in the very first chapter of the Bible, right, let there be light. It says that there is this all-powerful God, right? A supreme being. Because that's what that word God means. God isn't actually God's name, by the way. But there's this supreme God who is so powerful that the way that it's described is that he opened up his mouth and he spoke the universe into existence with his word. Right? But if you really think about it, God doesn't have a mouth, does he? Right? Your existence with your two arms and legs and fingers and toes and mouths and nose and ears, they're all utilities. God hears you, but he doesn't have ears like you have ears. Right? God smells you, but he doesn't have a nose like you have a nose. And God speaks, but he doesn't have a mouth like you have a mouth. And his voice doesn't sound like our voices. So what is that word? Right? And then you go into the first chapter of John in the New Testament, and it says, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God. And the Word was God. What can that possibly mean? Do you not get confused or like say, wow, like, that's really deep. Like, what does that mean? Well, it means that your concept of what that word means probably is insufficient, for you to process what you know what I'm saying? Like the word. It's a declaration or an expression of intent, right? Like if you create something, like if I've used this definition before, like Slash from Guns N' Roses playing the guitar solo in Sweet Child of Mine. That was an example of like word in action, an expression, a declaration of his soul in that moment, right? And what you declare as a person, like when it says that in the beginning, God said, "Let there be light," and that's how light came into the universe. What does that mean? Does it mean that like God, was sitting on his butt in his throne? Because in this example, God has a butt because he's got 2 arms and 2 legs and a back. And he opened up his mouth, like the mouth that we have with teeth. Obviously, God needs teeth. He needs to chew his food. See what I'm saying? And he opens up his mouth and he speaks, "Let there be light," and boom, there was light. Like, no. This is way deeper than that. That the word is the authority. The expression, the like, this is who I am and this is what I'm capable of, and because I'm capable of it, Because I have the authority to do this, therefore let there be light. The Word. I don't know if what I've got going on in my mind is coming through on this recording, but do you understand what I'm saying? Like that word. Quote, word. The word itself is profound in its implications. And because you were made in the image of God, that means you have things about you that are just like God, because you're made in His image. Right? God made man in His image. Like my son. My son is simultaneously 50% me and 50% his mother. Right? So 100%, right? 50 and 50. And he's also 100% independent of the both of us and 100% himself. My son was made in the image of me and his mother. And because of that, he is now 100% himself. Right? So before I start getting a whole bunch of emails like, oh, you shouldn't compare yourself to God. It's like, no, the Bible says I was made in His image. Therefore, there are things that I have in my life that are similar to Him. There are characteristics that I share with my Creator. God is the Father of the universe, and I am one of His children. I am related to my Father. There are things about me that are half Him and 100% me. And that concept of word, your word, is one of those things that you have in common with your Father. That when you express yourself, you have to be very careful in those expressions because it's powerful, whether you realize it or not. If you communicate weakness, then you are making the planet and mankind weaker. If you express darkness and deception, then you are making the humanity worse off. And you're making it harder for other people to get through their lives. And if you go through your life, expressing good, solid character and morals and God's kingdom and justice, then you are making the world a better place. Be it ever so small, to whatever degree that you do it, that's what you're doing, your word. And we can see these people in Congress and in the Senate right now, presidents of the United States, dealing in darkness and expressing their word to the detriment of the entire planet. Let your word be yes or no, because anything outside of that is evil. That's the show for today. Hey, listen. I told you guys over the weekend I had a equipment failure, if you will. I reached out to you guys on Telegram and said, listen, guys, I need some money. I got to replace this. Thank you to Bryce for the $50. I'm gonna go pick up the new cable today. I really appreciate that, you guys. Listen, things break down, right? Everything on this podcast, it all goes through my laptop. It all, I have equipment that I use to do this, and equipment breaks. So if you want to support the show, there's many of you, a few of you that do, right? Bad Wolf and Todd Milligan and Adriana, a bunch of you guys, Jay Honey. I appreciate you guys supporting. If you are new to the show, if you want to support the show, I would appreciate it. You can do that a couple of different ways. You can either become like a monthly supporter. If you want to do like $1 a month or $5 a month, whatever, it's real easy. Go onto my website, archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com, and you can become a Patreon member. Or if you just want to throw, you don't want to do like a monthly thing, dude, I get it. I understand that. If you just want to throw a couple of bucks or a few or whatever, you can do that on PayPal, right? And both of those links are on my website, archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com. And if you can't do either of those, please make sure that you have hit subscribe on the podcast. I appreciate you guys coming in and listening to the show every day and supporting me in that way. Thank you so much. I will talk to you tomorrow. And remember, Let your word mean something, or else you're going to look like a coward and a flake. Till tomorrow.